"You look like a rusted spanner, old man." They laughed as he limped into the hangar, a small figure against hulks of metal. The men in coveralls nudged each other, voices loose with certainty. Arthur Bennett, aged 84, kept his silence, his hands folded where grease had worn the skin pale. He looked at the Abrams as if meeting an old companion. His face tightened in a line learned from many roads. He had been a tank commander once, in a campaign that left names on his palms. Liam Parker was 27, hands quick and eyes that darted to screens. He had been trained by manuals, taught to trust gauges and diagnostics. He had not been taught to listen to metal. Liam said the machine was beyond them, and he said the diagnostics had failed. He grinned in a way that wanted the laugh to stick. The insult landed like a thrown rag. Arthur did not answer. He set his palm on the hull and felt a low, patient rumble. He closed his eyes and moved like a man remembering a route he had walked 1,000 times. He asked for a wrench and began with the basics the manuals often ignored. He pointed at a coupling, then at an oil smear, then at the rhythm of a pump. They watched with thin patience that folded into curiosity. Arthur tapped a bearing and listened. He rubbed a filter and found the grain in the metal. Liam watched, first with disbelief, then with a hunger he did not expect. The older man moved with quiet authority, a cadence that needed no proof. A spark when he tightened a connection made no one celebrate. The engine gave a cough, a tentative shudder, then fell silent. The hangar held its breath. For a moment Liam believed the worst. Arthur steadied himself on the tank and let a memory spill. He mentioned a call sign from long ago and a corner where a pipe had been soldered by hand. It was a detail no manual kept. Michael, the sergeant overseeing the repair, followed one instruction and a pump turned more smoothly. A small victory lived in the gap between gears. Liam climbed into the driver's seat and did not mimic Arthur. He listened to instruments and to the man beside him. He adjusted a valve by feel, and the tank accepted the touch like a creature waking. The machine started with an uneven breath, a metallic cough folded into a deeper rhythm. Men glanced at one another as if witnessing a private reawakening. The sound was familiar and heavy with history. Arthur stood back, eyes steady. He said nothing about medals. He preferred the work, the way hands met in difficult tasks. He had survived a life where noise stayed long after people left. Liam unstrapped and moved closer. He asked how Arthur had known to check a simple seal. Arthur tapped his temple and then the hull, as if the knowledge lived between memory and metal. Liam felt respect, quiet but true. Emma from logistics picked up a stray bolt and held it like a small charm. The gesture was tender and unexpected. Arthur smiled, a small thing that changed the room. Old stories surfaced in fragments, not explanations but traces. Arthur spoke of a night where silence had been heavier than orders and stopped. He did not finish the thought, leaving a hollow that needed filling. Liam asked if Arthur had been afraid then. Arthur answered with a dry remark about tools, not feelings. The answer landed like a thrown coin, and men shifted. They realized the tank did not only obey wires. It responded to touch, to patience, to the body that had once driven it when decisions were made in seconds. The young engineers exchanged looks that admitted a prior mistake. Liam found his hands had stopped trembling. He realized that training had taught him rules, but not patience. Michael cleared his throat and admitted they had been hasty to judge. A hush settled that was not emptiness, but attention. Each man felt that something older was passing through the room, not loud, not claimed, simply present. Arthur prepared to leave. He ran a hand along the side of the Abrams, as if saying farewell to a companion. He adjusted his cap and began to walk away. Liam called him back and asked a question none of the others had thought to ask. Who taught you to hear the engine? He wanted to know. Arthur stopped, and after a small while said he had earned its trust, and that trust could not be read on any screen. They watched Arthur go, each man carrying a new, fragile thought. The question of how much the old knew and how little the new had learned remained hanging. Who would carry that trust next remained unknown. The hangar held that question like a quiet debt, truly. Liam did not sleep that night. He heard the Abrams as rhythm, not data. The beat would not leave him. He returned to the hangar before dawn. The tank sat with oil streaks and fingerprints. On the driver's seat lay a small notebook. The cover creased, and the words "Listen twice, act once" inside. Liam opened it and found short sketches and a sequence of checks. The spanner Arthur had used rested in the footwell, still warm. The tools smelled faintly of oil and age, like things that had been used to steady hands. Michael arrived with 2 mugs and a skeptical look. They worked slower this time. Liam copied Arthur's motions, feeling for the give of a coupling and the tone of a pump. Emma brought a folder of service records. Liam read the entry aloud. Lieutenant Arthur Bennett, Royal Armored Corps, Gulf War, call sign Ghost 12, vehicle lost, crew missing. The words stuck in his throat. The record did not fit the man who had left the note. Liam drove to Hatherley that afternoon and found Arthur on his porch, tools at his feet. The cottage was plain, as if built with the same economy from which Arthur spoke. Arthur spoke plainly. "We were hit," he said. "The tank burned. The crew were gone. I came back to keep the machine from being lost in more than scrap." He offered no drama, only the facts and a shorthand sadness. He showed Liam how to place a hand on a bearing and feel its temper. He tapped seals in a pattern that revealed slack or strain. Each action was small, exact, and learned from nights of fixing with little light and fewer words. Liam practiced until the motions felt right. The lessons were mechanical and moral at once, where manuals listed tolerances and torque settings. Arthur taught a patience that read the machine as a partner rather than a spreadsheet. Back at base, they ran the engine, a cough, then a steady inhale, then a rhythm that settled like a heartbeat. Men glanced at one another with surprise. The sound felt earned and fragile. Arthur had written a single line in the notebook. "Earn its trust." Liam read it to the crew. The phrase acted like a quiet command. It changed the tone of how they spoke to machines. Liam rewrote the notes into a clearer checklist, adding margin reminders. Tap, listen, pause. He filed formal procedures in the log, but kept the intimate steps in the notebook, reserving them for hands willing to learn by touch. The training officer requested a demonstration on the armored range. Liam agreed and mapped a route that used old hulks and practice obstacles to strain tracks, suspensions and pumps. It was not showy, but it would test patience. During the trial, a hydraulic coupling set off a warning on the panel. Hands reached for tools with the old reflex. Liam stopped them and knelt, tapping the coupling in Arthur's pattern. He felt the telltale slack and freed a seized brace. The warning cleared, and the system steadied. The Abrams moved through the course with steadiness rather than haste. Officers who had watched more than once noticed how the crew corrected early and avoided cascading faults. A note went upward recommending Liam for a supervisory post to spread the method. He accepted because it felt like duty rather than promotion. A fortnight later, a visitor brought a brass plate marked Ghost 12 and a folded note. "Pass it on." Liam mounted the plate by the hatch as a reminder. Word spread to other armored units. Crews came to the hangar to watch and practice. Liam ran short, disciplined sessions that taught gestures and listening more than manuals. Emma kept the notebook and added diagrams. Faults were found earlier and fixed with less drama. Apprentices learned to pause and to check twice before moving. Michael's tone grew quieter, his hands steadier. The workshop lost a little of its hurry and gained a steadying rhythm. One evening, a folded photograph appeared beneath the notebook. It showed a crew inside a scorched vehicle, faces set, eyes that had seen much. On the back, someone had written for you to remember. The photograph settled on the bench like an obligation and a comfort. As men changed postings, they carried the practice with them. Units that adopted the checklist reported fewer failures and safer runs. Small rituals multiplied into a tangible difference in safety and morale. Liam walked the hangar at night and pressed his palm to the hull where the letters were faint. He read the etched line again and felt the weight of trust that had been handed to him by a man who had wanted no fuss. He did not know all the reasons Arthur had returned that day. He knew only the effect, that attention saved machines and lives. That was enough to keep him teaching the next hands how to listen. Liam stood alone in the hangar. Long after the others had gone, the tank sat still, its hull faintly warm from the day's tests. He brushed the dust from the brass plate that read Ghost 12. The letters caught the light like a quiet salute. The new recruits would arrive in a week. They would bring clean hands and fast talk, and he would have to teach them to slow down. The thought made him both tired and proud. He took Arthur's notebook from the bench and turned to the first page, reading the words again. Listen twice, act once. When training began, Liam said little. He simply tapped the metal, showed them where to listen, and waited. Some laughed at first, calling the ritual old-fashioned. Yet when a hydraulic valve held steady under their watch, the laughter softened. Emma managed the checks, Michael kept order, and Liam guided without raising his voice. The workshop gained a rhythm again, a steady patience like breath. They were building something invisible, trust between man and machine. By midsummer, the regiment scheduled a full field exercise. The Abrams would lead the column through a rough training ground filled with wrecks and craters. It was meant to simulate chaos, but Liam saw it as a test of composure. The morning of the trial, he walked around the tank in silence. He traced each weld, each cable, as if greeting an old friend. When he climbed into the commander's seat, the air felt still, waiting. He remembered Arthur's calm when others doubted him. The old man's voice seemed to echo through the steel. The engine started with a deep rumble that rolled through the ground. The crew moved as one. Commands were short, deliberate, quiet. Every movement was exact, measured by touch and instinct. Where others saw obstacles, Liam saw rhythm. Tracks gripped, gears shifted, and the Abrams carried its weight with confidence. Halfway through the course, a warning light flashed amber, the same hydraulic system again. Liam raised a hand. No panic, no rush. He tapped the gauge, then the floor plate near the pump, and felt the vibration steady. Hold her steady, he said. The light faded. The tank pressed forward, leaving a trail of dust and respect. When they finished, the officer overseeing the test called it flawless, but Liam only smiled and said, "It wasn't us. It was the machine remembering." The others didn't understand fully, but Emma did. She placed her hand on the hull beside his and said quietly, "And it remembered you." That night, the crew cleaned every surface, not from order, but from care. Liam noticed how even the youngest recruits treated the tank like something alive. They spoke in low voices, the way people do in a chapel. Arthur's ghost, he thought, had found a way to stay. Weeks turned into months. The regiment adopted his checklist officially. Other units sent people to learn it. The notebook was copied and passed around, though Liam kept the original in the hangar drawer, pages worn and soft at the edges. He added one line at the end. If you listen long enough, it will speak back. In autumn, the brass plate began to dull with time. Liam didn't polish it. He preferred it that way, aged and honest. A journalist visited once, asking about the Bennett method, as they called it. Liam refused the interview. He said it wasn't a method, it was respect. Later that year, a small ceremony was held at the Regimental Museum. They dedicated a section to Arthur Bennett, former commander of Ghost 12. Liam stood at the back, hat in hand, saying nothing. The display included the photograph that had once rested under the notebook, the scorched faces of men who had never left the tank in spirit. When the crowd dispersed, he stayed behind. The curator, a quiet woman with oil-stained gloves, handed him a slip of paper. It was Arthur's handwriting, copied from an old maintenance log. The words read, A machine never forgets those who treated it well. Liam folded the note and placed it inside his jacket pocket. The words pressed close to his heart as he left the hall. Back at the hangar, the lights were dim. He climbed into the driver's seat one last time. The smell of oil, metal, and faint dust filled the air. Comforting. Familiar. He placed his hand on the control lever and waited. The machine hummed softly, almost like a breath. He thought of Arthur, of the men who had driven before, and of those who would come after. The line between the living and the gone felt thin, like steel under tension. He did not feel haunted, only guided. Outside, the night settled around the hangar. Liam locked the door, looked once more at the brass plate and whispered, "Carry on." No one heard him but the tank, and perhaps that was enough. Thank you so much for spending your time with this story today. It truly means a lot that you choose to be here, listening to these quiet voices from the past. If it touched your heart, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this story with someone who would understand its silence. Each gesture helps these untold memories find new ears. I'd love to hear your thoughts, so please leave a comment below and join the discussion. Your words often become the start of another story. See you in the next tale of Quiet Heroes. And until then, I wish you calm days, steady hearts, and good company along the way.